How to streamline my business processes. Many of your Monday through Friday or Saturday or Sunday is just kind of living life in reactivity. You're on the run. Why? It's because your processes don't run themselves. Are you tired of doing it all yourself and you look around and you start blaming other people? I don't think the people are the problem. I think it's probably the process or the lack thereof that's the problem. By the end of this video, you're going to know the exact sequence to get your processes out of chaos and into a system. We worked with a remodeler, and what we found in remodeling is it's really, really hard. It's actually a little bit harder sometimes than just building new ground up, because when you go in as a remodeler, you pull the sheetrock off, you don't know what you're dealing with behind. You can have your best laid out plans, but it might be thrown off in an instant because you're remodeling something that has already been built. Well, this particular remodeler, whenever he came in a new project, he kind of ran a new project as if it was the first time he had ever run a project. He was sort of recreating the wheel over and over and over again. We introduced him, what I'm about to introduce to you, and over time, he had the 4 core systems embedded in his business: marketing, sales, ops, and admin. And he had processes or standard operating procedures that were documented to go along with those. And once he started to do that, even though remodeling can kind of throw you for a loop, every project started to run the same way from there on out. Chaos out, clarity in. That's what we want to be able to focus on. In a contracting business, there can be a lot of autonomy. A lot of people get into it because they go, hey, I want to be the boss. I want to call my own shots. I want to do that sort of thing. And that's great for a little while. And then we've got to start treating it like a business and not just a gig, not just a little side hustle that we're doing, but turning this into an operational process. So what turns a gig into a business? It's when we can identify how business is actually built and start leading it and running it like it is its own entity, like it's its own organism. So if we looked at it from a macro standpoint, I want to introduce you to 3 major tools, but I'm going to do it on a very cursory level and then dive into a couple elements that I think will be really helpful. The first major tool is what we call the business operating system. And so we've developed this on our own, and there's 4 foundational cornerstones to a solid business operating system: purpose, people, process, and profit. The purpose are things like vision, mission, values, where you're going, the direction of your business, and you need to have those articulated. The people vertical is how you're going to interact with the different roles and personalities of your team: org charts, job roles, ideal weekly schedules, hiring, onboarding. Then there's the process vertical that's going to deal with the 4 core systems of every business. In this order, by the way: marketing, sales, operations, and administration or accounting. And then the 4th foundational cornerstone is the profit vertical, what we call the fractional CFO deck. Things like financial dashboards, subdivided cash accounts, all your reporting, your pro formas, budgets, calculators, all of those that are in there. And you're like, well, Scott, I only have 3 employees. Sorry, I don't think I stuttered. Like, you got to have all of this stuff regardless of the size of your business. Well, Scott, we're in construction. All right, special snowflake. Listen, it's just you and I. We can banter back and forth, right? You're a contractor. You're rough. You can take this stuff. Well, the reality is too many contractor owners run their businesses like a hobby, and we need to stop doing that. We need to run it like a business. So we got those 4 foundational cornerstones. And remember I said marketing, sales, ops, and admin? That actually leads us to our second major tool of the business and what we call the master process roadmap. Now, when we're streamlining our business processes, this is where we're going to anchor our time. Oh, that was a key word. And it's going to lead us to our third major tool, is what we call the anchor. Not a boat anchor, a climbing anchor. Believe it or not, my wife and I just spent 3 nights on a boat last week. And so I can tell you what a boat anchor does, and it's not super stable, because we slept at the front of this boat. Some friends of ours that they're doing some time on a boat and invited us to be there, slept on the front of the boat. Well, what's on the front of the boat? The anchor. And it's a big chain. And at night, when the wind's howling and that boat's kind of going back and forth, yes, it's sort of keeping it there, but you can hear the noise of that thing beating, and so it's doing its job. But the anchor I'm talking about is not a boat anchor. It's actually a climbing anchor. And so you take a climbing anchor and you pin it at the top of the rock, and what hangs off the climbing anchor are all the lead ropes. Well, if that climbing anchor comes unlodged, what happens to the lead ropes and the people on them? Not good things. And so we call this third major tool the anchor. Why? Is because it's the one tool that would create repetition, predictability, and meaning around implementing the standard operating procedures that are going to help you streamline the business processes of your business. So if the operating system are the tools to run the business, and the anchor is your reminder to train, to put on repetition, predictability, and meaning to build the culture, then the master process roadmap is where we're going to invest our time so that we can start to build, replicate, and deploy these processes to begin to streamline your business so your business runs and grows with or without you. Yeah, I'm going to pause there because that was a good one. You probably need to write that down and go, I want a business that does that. I want you to have a business that does that. So how do we get there? Before I go any further, I want to draw your attention to a video. This is a full-scale masterclass that I've done. It's not just a 10-minute video, but if you go down in the description link below, it's a video on how to run a construction company. Settle down. I know, I'm not saying you don't know how to run one. What I am saying is I will give you a different perspective on how to run a construction company from multiple different angles. We do a massive deep dive that I think will be incredibly helpful for you. So make sure you take some time. I will tell you, get your popcorn, get your favorite drink, put your phone away, act like it's a master class, like I'm sitting with you and teaching you how to run a construction company, because in there, I'm going to deep dive on those 3 major tools. But right now, all I have time for is to focus on the master process roadmap. So when we go back to that process roadmap, here's how it's going to work. We're going to identify those 4 core systems: marketing, sales, ops, and admin. And then we're just going to pick a process. Which process is causing you indigestion right now? Is it, I got to do estimating every single time. I got to do payroll every single time. Some of you, it might be marketing and sales. So I want to give you a fresh example of this. This just happened on Tuesday of this past week. We actually have a client that's an architect, so they support contractors, obviously. Well, one of their big challenges is business development. That is developing new business for their entity, particularly marketing and sales. So here's what we did to automate the process and streamline their business. The first thing I did is I asked the person who's in charge of business development, I want you to spend the next 20, 30 minutes walking me through every possible step that you can think of that is involved in business development for your architecture firm. Go. And so he just started talking and I started typing. I didn't have to, we could have just hit record, but I kind of like the interactivity and I got everything down that he said. So we're going, oh, I missed what you just said, go back and type it. And so we got all that out. Then what we did is we went into AI. I'm not going to give you a brand name because I want you to find your own, but I will tell you this around AI. I would prefer you look for AI tools that are not necessarily mainstream and that don't do advertisements if you can help it. Definitely don't use the free version of AI. You want to use a paid version so there's a little bit more security with it and so that everything you build within it can start to create a brain for yourself. And so here's what we did. We created a separate agent just for the business development workflow for this architecture firm. I had the person exhaust themselves of every possible detail that they could do. I then took all that content, went to the agent, and I said, hey, we want to build a business development workflow that operates the same time every single time, from prospecting all the way to the signing of a contract and everything in between. We want to leverage their ERP software. They tend to use an industry software for architecture firms. And so AI agent, be aware of this software. Here's their link. Here's tutorials so you can understand their software and how it works. And we want you to take the workflow and embed it into their software. Tell us the exact instructions on how to do that. And so we told AI all of this. And I don't have like a certificate in AI utility. I'm just a normal guy using a normal tool. And out of that, it created not only an SOP, but it also created an instruction sheet for how their technology person could take this business development workflow from prospect to contract signing and actually embed it in their software. So from now on, whenever they get a prospect, it goes into the software and the software just automates the step all along the way. That is a standard operating procedure for business development for an architecture firm. It took us about 58 minutes to do that from front to back. This is not a long, tedious process. In fact, we tend to use something that we call the systems mindset. And it says this: the next time you do a thing, you pull a permit, you submit plans, you do an estimate, you run payroll, you run your certificates of insurance, whatever it is that you do in your contracting business, I want you to record it like it's the last time you'll ever do it. That's what I'm doing right now. In fact, there's a record button. The only reason you're watching this is because we hit record. And so we're creating a standard operating procedure that, by the way, our team will watch so that they can understand my verbiage on all of these things here. All you have to do is record it, and now you've got AI tools to help you build it so that you can then go to that third major tool of the business, the anchor. Remember that climbing anchor? And you can take that process you just built, biz dev, payroll, pull permit, whatever, and you can put it on there so that every 3 weeks, 18 weeks, whatever, you retrain on that element. Again, make sure you go down and click on that link so you can fully understand the anchor, fully understand the operating system, fully understand the master process roadmap. But this will help you get you in the mood and the mode to begin to capture this process, because a process that's locked in your head is what we call a captive process. It's locked behind bars. We don't want you to do that. We want you to capture the process, get it out so the rest of your team can see it. And then once you start to train it, that's where you'll begin to streamline the business and create a lack of chaos, which is ultimately what we're going after. Why? It's because many contractor owners live in chaos, and we want to liberate you from that chaos so that you can make time for the things that matter most.